All right, hey, listen, if you've been following along, we're talking about 10 steps to the perfect sales system, right? Last week, we talked about appointment setting and setting that appointment. Now we're getting to the meat. This is where the money's made. This is where the magic happens, right? The presentation and application, right? These are one and the same. We've broken them into separate steps, but really, when you're talking about a presentation, if you're doing it right, that should lead you right into an application with a strong close. So we'll be talking about the close next as well, but I want to talk to you guys about presentation and application. And if you've followed me for any time, I've posted a few different things. This will be a more in-depth dive to my presentation, the way that I present any health insurance plan. So this is the universal presentation, and to prove that this is universal, up here I've got my little cliff notes. I got a little cheat sheet. Okay, this is an actual quote that I sent to a client. One option, but it is a short-term medical option, right? The other option is an ACA plan. Okay, we won't get into the specifics on what these plans exactly are, but I will present both of them to you right here. One, again, is ACA. One is a short-term medical. It would not matter if one is a fixed benefit. It wouldn't matter if it doesn't matter the company, the carrier, the type of plan. Man, this works for any of them, right? This is what we call the universal, hopefully I can spell it right, universal presentation, okay? Boom. So basically there's three components to this, and I've talked about this before in a video called The Only Three Things You Need to Know to Sell Health Insurance, right? This is the three things. It's very simple, right? The first one, day to day. Day to day. So this is your doctor's visits, right? Doctor's visits, prescriptions, x-rays, labs, day to day, right? This is the it's not necessarily an emergency. It's something that, hey, every once in a while I go to the doctor for a checkup, or hey, I get this medication monthly, right? X-rays, labs, diagnostic, all of that would fall under, according to me, would fall under day to day, right? The second, put it down here, number two that we're going to talk about is accidents. Okay, what happens in the event of an accident on this plan or this plan? It doesn't matter, again, what plan, but I'm going to present this. I'm going to present this just like I would to a client. We got Nicole's Options up here. That's the actual name of this. Is a real client. I called her this morning, right? So this is a presentation I will be doing in the future, and I'm going to present both plans. So accidents, right? And then the third thing is major med, catastrophic scenarios, right? What happens in those worst case scenario type of scenarios. The reason why I like to cover day-to-day, accident, and then major medical is because of the way that I build almost any plan, okay? Almost any time I'm talking to a client, right? ACA, non-ACA, subsidized plan, it does not matter. I want it to consist of three main things. This is kind of the basics. Now, I know there's all kinds of other ways you can build a plan and all kinds of other supplements, but I want it to consist of three things, right? You've got one, your base plan, two, an accident policy, and three, a critical illness or living benefit rider, right? This is the basics of what I'm selling anytime. Whether it's ACA or whether it is a short-term medical. So I'm going to jump into this and actually present, okay, but keep in mind, and I will actually write them up on the board for you, but keep in mind the three categories as we go through this. And naturally, if I had a client on the phone, it would be a whole lot easier to present. It's not as easy to present to nobody, but I'm just going to talk to my video guy like he's the client, and we'll go from there. So number two is accidents, and number three is major medical, catastrophic, worst case scenario. And I will write this. So if I have a notepad next to me, as I'm talking to the client, I'm actually writing this down. The first thing that we're going to cover is day to day, right? The second thing is accidents, and then I'm going to make notes of the things that I talked about, so I know that I didn't miss anything, right? I talked about this in the very beginning of this series. Stick to a process, right? Stick to a process. I'm guilty of not sticking to a process sometimes. I'm guilty of always wanting to change things up and not being a creature of habit. I really don't like to be a creature of habit. I like to change things up. I don't like the same old every single time, but that expression, right, that says, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, this thing works. I closed millions and millions and millions of dollars with this presentation, okay? It's universal. In fact, I was selling insurance for a company that only had a couple products, and I used it, and it was completely different than the products we're talking about today, and I used a very similar presentation. So this works for anybody. So again, client's name was Nicole, okay? We talked about appointment setting, and if you're setting a solid appointment, she's gonna show up. So it's ring, ring. Hey Nicole, this is Bradley Hannon, the health insurance broker. I was just calling, I sent you those quotes earlier. I know we had said this time at 11:31 today was gonna be the time we were gonna review those plans. Do you have them pulled up in front of you? Okay, no problem. I'll give you a few minutes, right? Let's just assume she didn't have them pulled up. I'm gonna beat her up right there. Hey, you don't have them pulled up? Come on, it's 11:31. I said 11:30. I'm just kidding, but hopefully she's got them pulled up. If she doesn't have them pulled up, no big deal. Wait for them. I use a quote sheet. Okay, I don't know what you guys are using, but I think this is so necessary. I mean, this is really, really necessary. It's a crucial part of my sales process of having a quote sheet and being able to compare options from different carriers side by side. If you don't have access to a CRM that allows you to build quote sheets, okay, and you're selling health primarily, you need to get in contact with me. This is definitely something, I mean, without this tool, I don't really know what I would do, right? I would spend a lot more time putting quotes together on like a PDF or something to send to the client. And I don't want to do that, right? I want to have a done for you type of way. And that's the CRM that I use allows that. So first things first, I use a quote sheet. If you don't use a quote sheet, we're just talking about presenting one plan. So I'm just going to go through the one plan, and then I'm going to do another presentation, briefer, is that a word? More brief presentation with the second plan. Okay, but the idea is that, again, I want to show you that you can present any plan using these 3 steps. Okay, so, all right, Nicole, you've got those plans pulled up. Awesome. So the first thing that I want you to know, Nicole, is that it doesn't matter if I'm talking about, and we're going to assume that she has coverage. Okay, we're going to assume that she has coverage, through an employer. We'll just say she's losing coverage through her employer. She loves the coverage but can't keep it. So, here we are looking at an ACA option or short-term medical option. So, Nicole, you've got those plans pulled up. The first thing that I want you to know is that it doesn't matter if I know you're coming off the employer plan. I know you love that coverage. But what I want to tell you is that it doesn't matter if we're talking about your employer coverage or we're talking about the plans that I've sent you that are on this quote sheet or the plan that we're looking at. There's 3 things you want to know. Okay, and this is everything that you're going to need health insurance for. The first is day-to-day. Okay, that's doctor's visits, prescriptions, labs, etc. So that's the day-to-day, the stuff that I know is important to you, Nicole, but to be honest with you, it's not the most important thing to me because my job, okay, and I'm pre-closing here, I'm setting this up. My job is to make sure that if something major happens to you, you're covered. That's what I care about most, but I know you care about the day-to-day stuff a lot as well, so I'm going to touch on that first. Make sense? We'll check in. Yeah, perfect. Okay, great. The second thing that I'm going to cover, okay, because you're healthy, you mentioned that you ride your bike a lot, you're going to the gym, your mountain climb, whatever it is, okay? Second thing is accidents. You're healthy. The most likely situation for a claim is probably going to be an accident. And hey, accidents happen and that's okay. I want you to know how the plan is going to cover you in the event of an accident. Does that make sense? Perfect. So we got that one. And then the last thing, and this is so important, the way that you word this, the way that you put this is so important because this is going to help you close more sales. Man, Eric, remind me, I'm sending this to my agents, man. They've got to see this again and again and again. We talk about this all the time, but even when I do it, I remind myself of how important sticking to the process is. So, Nicole, the third thing that we're going to talk about, okay, and the most important thing is the major medical catastrophic situation. So you're hospitalized, you're diagnosed with something horrible, something really, really bad's happened, you're in the hospital, and it's kind of the worst case scenario. That's what I want you to know, and that's what's most important to me is how this plan is going to cover you in the worst case scenario. Does that make sense, Nicole? Okay, great, perfect. And also, hey, by the way, the reason I'm going to cover that last is because if you forget everything else, the one thing that I want you to know is your responsibility if something actually happens to you. What I want you to know is in the worst case scenario, I'm covered up to this, right? Whatever that looks like. Does that make sense? Okay, great. Okay, Nicole, so first thing that I want to talk about is the day-to-day. okay? The plan that I sent you, and I'm just, again, I'm pretending that we're only looking at one plan. I'm not presenting multiple options. This is like one option, and you're focused in on that. So the plan that I sent you comes with, is an open, I'm not gonna use the names. I'm gonna refrain from using names, but so it's a little bit more difficult. But the plan that I sent you is a PPO plan, which means that you have nationwide coverage, okay? PPO plan with nationwide coverage. So anytime you're going to an in-network doctor, you're gonna receive pre-negotiated network discounts, right? You're gonna receive those rates anytime you're going in network. But what I want you to know is that it's a PPO, it travels with you anywhere in the country, any doctor, any hospital, anywhere in the country, you're good to go because you have a PPO plan. That's super important. Does that make sense? Awesome. So see how I'm constantly checking back in with her, making sure that she's following, everything's good. So that's the main thing. You know, I know on your employer plan, and again, I'm gonna kind of draw some comparisons up where I can. So I know on your employer plan, you know, you mentioned that you really like not having to pay a whole lot when you go to the doctor. I totally get that. You know, unfortunately, what we're looking at here is a much more affordable option, right? For the big stuff, it works great for the big stuff. For the day-to-day, right? For those doctor's visits, you may have a little bit more out of pocket because you're going to get the discount, and whatever you pay at that doctor's visit is going to go towards your deductible. Okay, does that make sense? Awesome. But in addition to that, you do have access to telemedicine. Okay, so now I just talked about the fact that, you know. And again, I'm assuming, I'm not getting into, I don't want to name carriers, specific benefits, but the plan that I sent her is a $5,000 deductible. You know, it is a PPO. There's telemedicine. So I'm drawing the fact that, hey, it's a little bit more catastrophic. It's a little bit more basic, but it's also a lot more affordable. I mean, in this scenario, it's a $600 price difference, $600 a month. Okay, so obviously, there's a lot of savings. So she's got some out of pocket for doctors and things like that. It makes sense because their next cheapest option is $1,400, right? So in addition to the PPO network, you have 24/7 access to a licensed medical doctor via teleconference or video conference. Let's say you've got a rash or something. You know, this is where stories help. This happened to me a couple years ago. I was actually deer hunting and I got poison ivy on my face. I woke up, had a horrible rash. Well, I was able to call into the doctor, send a couple pictures, and they were actually able to call in a prescription. I never even had to go to the urgent care. And oh, by the way, speaking of urgent care, you have a $50 copay for unlimited urgent care visits, right? It's $50 copay for urgent care. So I know that you don't have, it's not a ton of coverage on the day-to-day side for doctors and things, but you do have access to telemedicine, which is 24/7 access to a licensed doctor, a $50 copay for urgent care, right? Which is really gonna help you. Does that make sense? Awesome, awesome. So this is the hardest part for people to overcome. Like I talk to agents all the time that are struggling to sell it because the plan doesn't have doctor's visit benefits. It doesn't have a copay. It doesn't cover their wellness 100%. And I understand that. But this is a very specific situation where, again, the plan that I'm quoting was like $900. The next closest plan is like $1,500. It's literally a $600 a month difference, and that's the cheapest plan on the marketplace without a subsidy. So, you know, it is difficult. So I understand that that's hard, but you've really got to sell the highlights of it, right? It's a PPO network. You're getting access to those discounted rates. You've got free telemedicine, $50 copay for urgent care. That's just on this specific plan. But you can, when we go over the marketplace plan next, you're going to see that this kind of changes a little bit. So you've got to just kind of, and again, I'm always going to put it out there exactly what it is. So does that make sense, Nicole? Now I'm going to move along to accidents, okay? So in the event of an accident, okay, the second thing I want to talk about with you is accidents, right? They happen, you know, hopefully not very often. I do have some clients who are very accident prone, and it's a good thing that we have the accident coverage we have in place, but again, I'm telling stories, right? It's a good thing we have the accident coverage we have in place, but you know, hopefully that's not your situation. However, if it is, and you've got an accident, you have an accident on this plan, we've built in accident coverage that has a $250 deductible, okay? That $250 deductible is going to give you access to enough money to either A, cover the accident, or B, cover the deductible which leaves you with $250 out of pocket. So I know on the day-to-day side, you weren't thrilled about not having those benefits for the doctor's visits, not having your wellness covered 100% all the time. But I can tell you the worse your situation gets on this plan, the better the plan actually is gonna work for you. Because in the event of an accident, the most you're gonna pay, or you're gonna have a $250 out of pocket, right? Very simple. And then I'll give an example a lot of times. So like, let's just say you were riding your bike, you wreck, somebody throws a stick in your spokes, hopefully that doesn't happen, but you flip over the handlebars, you break your arm and your leg, right? You got a $20,000 accident. Well, for $250, you're gonna get access to a $10,000 accident benefit that again, is gonna help you cover your deductible, leaving you out of pocket with $250. The other thing that this helps with, and I'm really selling the accident plan now, the other thing that this helps with is the fact that you have a $5,000 deductible on your plan, okay? Do you know what happens, Nicole, if you have an accident that's, let's say, $3,500 and you're on a plan with a $5,000 deductible? She may know, she may not. I will ask this question a lot, but what I would say is you're gonna pay most of the cost of that accident. You may get a network discount because you're in network, but you have a $3,500 accident on a $5,000 deductible plan, you're gonna end up putting all that money out and still maybe not even hitting your deductible for the year. So this really fills in the gaps between zero and your $5,000 deductible. Does that make sense? Perfect. Okay, and the last thing that I wanna talk about, okay, and this is the most important thing, is how this plan is gonna cover you in the worst case scenario. So you're hospitalized, major medical bills, you're in the hospital for weeks, something big happens, I want you to know how this plan is gonna cover you in that situation. Okay, so like I mentioned, you do have a $5,000 deductible. Okay, and on this plan, you have up to $1 million in coverage. Okay, so that means if you have a covered incident that costs $150,000, the most you're gonna pay for that is the $5,000, right? You're out of pocket, your responsibility is the $5,000. But remember what I told you about the fact that the worse your situation gets, the better the plan is actually gonna work for you. Well, if you're diagnosed with cancer on this plan, if you have a heart attack, stroke, something major happens, you have a $50,000 benefit, okay, that's gonna help cover your deductible, okay? So you're gonna take $5,000 out of that $50,000, be left over with $45,000. That money is not necessarily to cover your medical bills because obviously at this point, you've met your deductible, the insurance company's taking care of your medical bills. This money is to cover lost wages, time out of work, just kind of relieve the burden of the fact that you're just diagnosed with cancer or you had a heart attack or something major, some kind of major medical event. And that's what this is. It's going to cover travel and expenses. Let's say you want to go see a specialist across the country, right? Well, what insurance doesn't pay for is your hotel rooms, your plane tickets, all of that stuff. That's what this is going to help with, right? So again, the worse your situation gets, the better the plan is actually going to cover you. Does that make sense, Nicole? Perfect. Okay. Is there anything, remember I just covered all the bases. Okay, so your goal now is you have these little buckets. Your goal is that their question is going to pertain to one of these buckets and you'll just remind, so if they have any questions. So Nicole, I just reviewed everything that you would need health insurance for. Is there anything that I didn't cover that you're curious about or that I can answer for you? All right, she may say no. Or she may say, and this is this is what happens more often than not, is, well, what would happen? And they refer to like a specific incident that happened with them in the past a lot of times. So what would happen if I, broke my big toe on my left foot and, whatever? Well, was that an accident? Because if it was an accident, you have that $250 deductible on the accident plan. Remember? So basically, we're not talking about the specifics of what exactly happened, but more so how it happened. Was it an accident? Did you meet your deductible? Was it some sort of critical illness, a major medical diagnosis, right? So once we get to that point, stay tuned for the next video next week. We're going to talk about the close, right, which we'll get to. But at this point, you've completed your presentation. Okay, the presentation's over. You can have questions, whatever. But hopefully anything that they ask you, okay, is going to fall within the day-to-day, the accident, or the major medical. And you just shoot them straight, right? So that's the short-term medical version. The ACA plan that I built also still has an accident and critical illness plan, right? Because sometimes these ACA plans will have higher deductibles. It's really good to supplement, okay? So not much changes, okay? The ACA plan, again, we won't name carriers, but the ACA plan that I built has an $8,300 deductible, and we built in $10,000 worth of accident and critical illness coverage, okay? So it's very similar presentation. So the first thing that I'm gonna cover is the day-to-day. Okay, on this plan, you actually have 100% of your wellness, not one, you have 100% of your wellness covered from day one. So that means any kind of labs, blood work, you know, if it's preventative, if it's deemed preventative care, it's covered 100%. Okay, that's awesome. In addition to that, it's an EPO, so that's exclusive provider organization. It's not quite a PPO, which is a preferred provider organization. It's kind of in between, but the good thing is no referral to see a specialist. Okay, so you don't need a referral to see a specialist. All I'm doing, guys, is plugging in the benefits of that additional plan. Okay, matter of fact, I actually did. Alongside of this, I actually built in telemedicine, so you have access to a licensed medical physician via 24/7 phone conference. So the idea is that either you build this in, or a lot of times the plans will cover that. A lot of ACA plans nowadays are giving you access to telemedicine. So I'm plugging in the day-to-day stuff, right? Whether there's an RX copay, a copay for doctor's visits, whatever the benefit is, you're plugging it into that day-to-day, okay? The second thing is accidents, and it's the same thing. You've got almost the same plan. I've got a $250 deductible for up to $10,000 worth of accident coverage. So what that means for you, Nicole, is that your deductible is $8,300. Well, you have up to $10,000 in accident coverage. So no matter the accident, you pay your $250 deductible. The rest will be taken care of, because either you can take care of your deductible or take care of the accident, right? It also fills in the gaps between the 0 and 8,300, which is the deductible on that plan. Okay, so you go through the accidents the same exact way. And then the last thing, the major medical. So there's actually $10,000 worth of critical illness, CI, built onto that plan. Okay, but you can also refer to the fact that, hey, worst case scenario, you're in the hospital, it's just you on this plan, your maximum out of pocket is $8,500 or $8,300 or whatever that maximum out of pocket is. However, if it's some sort of cancer, heart attack, stroke, life-threatening disease, we've got a $10,000 benefit that's payable to you to, again, help you cover that deductible, help you cover lost wages, time out of work, you just kind of relieve the burden. So it does not matter the plan that you're presenting, okay? And by the time you get done with your presentation, you should be as winded as I am. You should give it everything you've got, right? Because if you do, you will close, baby, which is what we're gonna be talking about next. So stay tuned. We're wrapping this series up with the close and follow-up. But I hope this helps with your presentations. I'm telling you, stick to a system that works and you'll close more sales. Hey, listen, if you just watched that presentation video, the perfect presentation, but you haven't seen product selection, quote, and appointment setting, man, you might completely miss your presentation if you're not setting solid appointments. So check out this video right here.